Who is Bobbi Althoff, and how does she get an interview with Drake and Lil Yachty despite being completely unknown? There are secrets Bobbi doesn't want you to know. But not only that, Bobbi Althoff may have had sexual relations with Drake that led to her divorce. Was Bobbi Althoff a culture vulture, and was her family less important than her fame?
Did Bobbi Althoff steal her entire style from Funny Marco?
And by the way, we've interviewed producers of Mos Def and Talib Kweli's Black Star album and Wordsworth of MTV's Lyricist Lounge. Typically, how most podcasters rise to fame is through building an audience over a period of time. Bobbi Althoff is a little different, or a lot different, as there wasn't a track record on YouTube for Althoff building a fan base through the hard work and blood, sweat, and tears that many famous YouTubers have done to gain a following. Her rise to fame has exposed a lot of uncomfortable truths about industry plants and the upper class whites' opinion of rap music, especially those who grew up with money and wealth. It seems like many wealthy white people don't like hip-hop because they cannot resonate with the struggle from rags to riches that hip-hop often represents. This is especially true for someone who either grew up with money, inherited, or married into it, instead of creating generational wealth through their own hard work. Bobbi Althoff said she got her interview with Drake by DMing him, yet failed to include that her father worked with Snoop Dogg, or rather, stole a set of doors that Snoop Dogg was trying to throw away. Is Bobbi Althoff's sarcastic and demeaning attitude towards black rappers based in racial superiority? Before the Civil War, poor whites had functioned as social pariahs in the Deep South because they had no real place or stake in the slave system, and thus actually stood to threaten it. Slavery had driven the wages of Southern white laborers well below those of their Northern counterparts in New York City. While competing with free blacks for jobs, poor whites would leverage their race in job applications, mentioning things like, "At least I'm not black." Bobbi Althoff said in an interview that she didn't grow up with a lot of money. But did Bobbi Althoff even grow up poor? Is this a manufactured story just for her image? As a software engineer at Google, Bobbi Althoff may have also adopted the belief systems of other rich white people she surrounded herself with. The average salary of a software engineer at Google ranges from $191,000 per year for L3 to $2.6 million per year for an L9 engineer. Bobbi Althoff's ex-husband is wealthy as well, and a millionaire. Currently, Bobbi Althoff's net worth is $4 million. Either way, Bobbi Althoff's journey to fame raises questions about her real intentions. The real question remains is the insulting personality that Bobbi Althoff portrays really just an act, or does it reveal her real feelings about black people and hip-hop? Bobbi begins season 2 of her really good podcast by saying she has a lot of money now. And she says, "You better watch it all. I'm watching you."
Althoff started her career on TikTok. Her videos were primarily about motherhood, raising her children, pregnancy, and breastfeeding. She shares 2 daughters with her ex-husband, Corey. In one of her first public TikToks from July 2021, Althoff wrote, "When people choose to have kids in their 20s instead of waiting till they're at least 35 plus," over a video of herself mouthing the lyrics to Nicki Minaj's Grinding, appearing to mock people who commented about her being a young mom. To protect her children's privacy, Bobbi Althoff created fake names she used on TikTok in place of her children's real names. Strangely enough, instead of picking names like Tamara or Vicky, Bobbi Althoff called her 2 children Richard and Concrete, and even defended those names. Althoff became TikTok famous during her second pregnancy after creating several viral hit videos. One video was called "Sucking in My Belly at 6 months Pregnant." The TikTok community early on questioned the sometimes contradictory statements made by Bobbi Althoff, such as protecting her children's privacy and not wanting to show their faces on camera, to then suddenly showing the child she calls Concrete's face on the camera, as well as revealing her children's name on Instagram after saying she was not going to say them publicly. This and more made the content creator community question Bobbi Althoff's integrity. Althoff debuted her podcast, The Really Good Podcast, in April 2023. And one of her first guests, Tammin Cera, who played Jenna on Pretty Little Liars. Althoff demonstrated her Mean Girls insulting interview style when one of her first questions was, "So, you were on a show called Pretty Little Liars? Was it a lie that you're pretty?" If you're a guest on a podcast and the host constantly insults you, your looks, and your talent, does that make it a really good podcast? Is the title of Bobbi Althoff's podcast a joke for a really shitty podcast? Is Althoff an industry plant? And what really is an industry plant?
Bobbi Althoff has been accused of being an industry plant. But what exactly is an industry plant? Artists who are called industry plants have had their personality manufactured by marketing executives before being marketed to the public. Industry plants also go by the name label puppet and are also known to have gotten famous or popular through connections they have through their family, friends, inheritance, or wealth, rather than on becoming famous or popular through the merits of their own skill or talent. Bobbi Althoff has been called an industry plant by her own fans as well as the public.
The TLDR is that industry plants have their public images manufactured for them by record labels in order to market or sell something, not because of the skill or talent, but just connections. And the term came from the early 2010s hip-hop message boards. The majority of hip-hop fans do not find Bobbi Althoff funny as a comedian.
If Bobbi Althoff is not funny at all and doesn't have the ability to make witty comebacks in her interviews, is she an industry plant? Even if a small amount do find her humorous, if Bobbi Althoff isn't funny, she may be a label puppet or just someone extremely privileged who is visibly tone deaf, mocking hip-hop culture in her interviews. Bobbi Althoff won some people over from her TikTok mom channel, and there are many who will defend her no matter what. Other fans of Bobbi Althoff quickly got turned off by her lack of personality and lack of humor, as well as abrasive and rude interview style. Despite this, a really good podcast that we mentioned earlier, the name contradicts both the emotions Bobbi Althoff inspires from fans and those interviewed on her podcast. But how the heck did she get that interview with Drake? Bobbi Althoff portrayed herself as someone who took a risk, going into credit card debt to start her podcast, but did not mention how wealthy her husband was at the time, or the salaries of Google software engineers that range from $200,000 a year to literally in the millions of dollars. Entrepreneurs and startup business founders who have had to grind from poverty to financial success view risk entirely differently than how wealthy people view risk. Althoff paid Twitter followers $300 apiece to get Rick Glassman and Funny Marco on the first 2 episodes of her podcast. In an interview with People magazine, Bobbi Althoff says she DM'd Drake to get him on her podcast, but that turned out to be a lie. In reality, Drake is signed to the same agency that Bobbi Althoff is, called WME. It is said that through this connection and a mutual friend, as well as her now ex-husband being a millionaire, that Bobbi got her interview with Drake. Not just some random DM to Drake. This, like the actual risk Bobbi Althoff said she took to rack up credit card debt, was another seemingly manufactured story to portray Bobbi in one way, when in real life, she is someone completely different. It's interesting to note that after Drake's interview with Bobbi Althoff, he left WME. Let's talk about the Drake interview with Bobbi Althoff. The whole time Bobbi interviewed Drake, it felt like not only she was insulting Drake, but hip-hop culture as a whole, as well as black people and black culture. Bobbi Althoff's perpetual look of disgust is the same look seen on many white nationalist faces in Starbucks if a black man gets in line for a frappuccino. It's eerily similar to many white women's treatment of black people as less deserving of respect than white men. Is it a coincidence Bobbi is married to a white millionaire, or was before he divorced her? But that's not all. Her impersonation of an actual podcast host who wants to talk about hip-hop fails to feel sincere in any way. It's dismissive and rude without much appeal. Where did she get this idea? Where did she get this idea from to interview people? Was it Aubrey Plaza? No, because Aubrey Plaza is actually funny. Did Bobbi Althoff copy Between Two Ferns host Zach Galifianakis' style of interviewing? Not quite, because even his insults to Brad Pitt about living in Angelina Jolie's shadow were actually funny. So where did Bobbi Althoff steal her style from?
Drake and Lil Yachty fans did not expect nor want to see either of them disrespected when Bobbi Althoff interviewed the rappers on her so-called podcast. How did it even get to that point? On the Today Show with Hoda and Jenna in August 2023, Bobbi Althoff said, "I got the idea in April to start a podcast. I've always done this character, which is dry humor. And I was like, I'm just going to bring her along for a podcast." And yet, those comments don't sound factual when you compare the style that Bobbi Althoff attempts to do with Funny Marco. Funny Marco, if you've never heard of him, has 5.2 million Instagram followers and over 1 million subscribers on his YouTube channel, as well as 2.5 million TikTok followers and 2.5 million Facebook followers. It appears that Funny Marco's style of interviewing, playing as a very unprepared podcaster, was stolen by Bobbi Althoff, except she added a demeaning and insulting quality to it. In an interview on Funny Marco's channel, Lil Yachty exposed Bobbi. He discusses the relationship between her and Marco and how she was blowing up from disrespecting the culture and stealing contacts from him. Marco also spoke on her in other interviews since people were seeing the similarities. He stated that because she didn't really care about the people she was interviewing, the disinterest will ultimately lead to her downfall. While Marco continues to interview rappers and other famous Black entertainers centered around modern hip-hop culture, Bobbi has no theme and will interview whoever is willing to be punished by her ignorance and arrogance.
I definitely am. See, I don't do interviews. You're special.
Thank you. Did you enjoy this interview? Would you recommend it to a friend?
Hell no. To be honest, they ain't gonna fuck with this shit.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend listening to music to anyone either.
Looking at Bobbi Althoff's interview with Drake, she criticized Drake on many things and asked Drake, "How much money do you have? Can you buy me a Lamborghini? Why did you call him your dog? I don't like that." And criticized the slang term of dog as friend, and criticized Drake for not replying to her text message at 3 a.m. Bobbi then said, "Why do you follow so many people on Instagram? I wish I had the amount of followers you have." Drake replied, "What about being grateful for what you have? You have 600,000 followers. That's a lot of followers." She replied, "I'm grateful for what I have, but my goal is to be bigger than you one day." The interview gave off a very toxic vibe as Bobbi went on to say, "I hope this helps me in life. Just stop talking and think." She told Drake to stop talking. Drake throughout the interview attempted to be friendly despite how harsh Althoff was being. It seems like a possibility that there was a derogatory racial aspect in her disregard for Black rappers and their colloquialisms. As fans have pointed out, the Bobbi Althoff did not do the same sarcastic insults when she was interviewing Scarlett Johansson. Why the change of attitude when interviewing white actresses? Lil Yachty is known for his viral hit One Night from his debut EP Summer Songs, and he's also known for being positive, just like the rapper Kyle is, that he rapped with on I Spy. And yet, as soon as the interview began with Bobbi Althoff, Lil Yachty said,
"Hi, welcome to the Really Good Podcast. My name is Bobbi Althoff, and I'm here with... Do you want to introduce yourself?"
It's called the Really Good Podcast?
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's such a, condescending name.
and she replied, "Your house looks like it's meant for a toddler."
I'm not trying to relate to you.
You drink coffee?
Mm-hmm. You don't. Yeah, see, we don't have anything in common.
I did that for you. Yeah, I knew
Because you knew I drink coffee.
Absolutely.
How? You don't, does your family doesn't drink coffee? This isn't, it's a
Let's
cultural
talk
thing?
my family into this.
Is it a cultural thing? What are you trying to
What are
do
you
right now?
getting at?
You just said I don't drink coffee.
Are you saying Black people don't drink coffee?
Is that what you're saying?
I said no, I said I don't drink coffee.
You said
And
my
then
people
you
will know.
counteracted
You just
with it. I
don't
said
do
people
that.
And then
Don't
you
do that.
counteracted you're like, your family don't drink coffee?
No, you looked at the camera and you said my people. Can you stop getting...
Look who's calling!
And then Lil Yachty got a phone call, and he raised the phone up.
You should answer that.
Yeah. Say hey to Bobby. Say hey to Bobby.
And what very few people actually paid attention to when watching this episode with the interview with Bobbi Althoff and Lil Yachty is what the phone was saying. It was actually Drake. And Drake said on the phone, you can hear it in the episode saying, "This is so bad." Lil Yachty replies, "She's being a dumb racist."
She's being dumb racist. That's what I'm saying.
Drake replied, "Bobbi, I just deleted our whole interview by accident. Sorry, bitch."
Yeah, she just made a comment about like black people not drinking coffee.
Bobbi, I just deleted our whole interview by accident. Sorry, bitch.
Now Drake got the interview with Bobbi Althoff taken down, despite it being on her channel, and he did this by very cleverly including a sample of Tyga's Rack City, which meant that even though he agreed to the interview, Drake was trying to suss out Bobbi Althoff from the beginning for whatever reason. Hip-hop culture has been used by many people for many reasons. Some relate to overcoming the struggle in search of success, and others to giving voice to the people who are not heard.
One thing is for sure, hip-hop culture is black culture, even if it's expanded beyond its roots. Why is it that Funny Marco style, when done by a blonde-haired white woman, is somehow viral now? Is Bobbi Althoff doing the same thing that white rockers did by taking black culture and making it popular once it's said through white mouths? Every person in the media spotlight will have haters and face criticism. But for Bobbi Althoff, this may be criticism that's well-deserved, as the trade-off she's made for fame come at a much higher cost. Just like past presidents have created an environment more friendly towards racism and casual disregard of humanity, Bobbi Althoff's stolen interview style from Funny Marco seems to be also just a front for her real feelings about black people and her opinion of them as rappers, with white superiority leaking out of every comment and her dismissive looks. There's definitely something different about Bobbi Althoff, who is willing to sacrifice her family and reputation for more clicks.
Should she even be given a platform?
And if so, what kind of behavior does this encourage for white people towards black people in hip hop?
Don't miss our exclusive coverage of how rap killed rock and roll and the first rock star in rock and roll that you may have never heard of.
We're from the jump. Subscribe.